Everything gonna be all right this morning.
That's because Chuck's here. That's right.
Oh, yeah.
And now, your Swamp Guide, only on TNN.
There we go.
And good afternoon, everyone. Chuck Ellis here, your Swamp Guide on Muddy the Water podcast. And this is where we help you understand, first of all, how muddy the water is, and then help you understand how to navigate it. And I am your Swamp Guide, and with me, I have, as usual, Truthslinger Tim. How you doing, Tim?
I'm doing beautiful. How are you, Chuck?
Good, despite the insanity of everything that's going on in our world. I'm keeping my spirits up, surprisingly. Maybe it's some of that optimism from Bobby Charles.
Yeah, man, got it. He was great, man. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I think it was. I heard him at a low point, and I needed reinvigorating in the battle. I think we got just near 15 days to go or something like that, and we're in the home stretch, right? And so it was good to get a little wind under my sails emotionally, because every day it just seems like it never ends.
Well, especially in what you do, and what we're trying to do with this is highlight things that are going on in the world, and a lot of the things that are going on are not positive and not good, and so it's hard to stay positive while working. When you go out and spend some time putting up lawn signs, for instance, around town to encourage people to vote a particular way, to have those signs, taken down and desecrated, and to have people give you the middle finger and stuff like that. It's very tough. But at the same time, a number of friends of mine, we've been going around doing that the last couple of weeks, and one of the things that's actually been really encouraging is how many people are actually supportive of what we're doing, and how many people will stop by and be like, "Hey, can I get a sign?" Talking Trump signs here, and it's encouraging to know how many people are actually with us, despite the sense, especially down here in Portland, where it seems like everybody's a liberal. The reality is there are a lot more people that are tired of what's going on than I think we give credit for, because they seem to control everything, and so it's hard to believe. But the truth is that people are just being quiet about where they stand. It's like that. I think Bobby Charles was telling the story last time about the 2016, and 2016 was the year where if you had, talked about what people were saying in social media, the majority of people were more voting for Hillary. But when people actually showed up to vote, Donald Trump won. And the reason is people were not public about what they were doing because of the way in which people try to either, shame them, ostracize them, look down on them. Again, a good friend of mine recently was talking about not wanting to give money to the Cumberland County Republican Committee because he didn't want if he was concerned that if his name was on anything, that people would use it against him and it would hurt his ability to do business, which is a little bit of a cowardice on his part, but at the same time is partially understandable, because he's got business, he's got kids to feed, and in this kind of an environment, like, this is how people are treated if they stand up for truth. So it's hard to be positive, but
well, they're fascist tactics, they're authoritarian tactics. And, when you talk about all these things, and the terms, you throw them around, communism, fascism, but I mean, this is just, it's gaslighting, it's intimidation. It's, one step away from, neighbors, and we were there already with COVID-19 when neighbors were tattletaling on each other with, lines and stuff like that. And so, it's become hostile, which is why I keep trying to focus personally on this ecumenicism movement of people that are looking for ways that we have enough in common between us. And like I was watching we're making great strides with the Amish community in Pennsylvania, right? And they're basically saying, hey, we don't agree with, evangelicals or even conservatives except for about 80% of the time. But right now, 80% is real good. And whatever's coming from the left is crazy. Okay, we can't vote for that.
Yeah, I mean, they're just too radical. I mean, that's the issue. It's like, one of the interesting things, and I was going to get to this later, but why not just talk about it now, is just how, like, the Democrats, basically what you're hearing from them, if you listen closely and you're paying attention, is they want single party rule. Like, the only hope for America is single party rule. And it's like, single party rule is absolutely what you just said earlier. It's fascism, right? Especially if that's the Democrat Party, right? I'm registered as a Republican right now. I'm running for office as a Republican, but the significant majority of my adult life, I was registered unenrolled because, like, I don't like the party fighting between parties and this party's better than that, like all this stuff. But like right now, like the Democrat Party just isn't an option if you believe in liberty, if you believe in freedom, right? If you believe in power and control and forced vaccine thing, stuff like that, which is what they, did. They wanted to do in 2021, 2022. Fortunately, the Supreme Court said no. I mean, they did do it with federal workers, but they didn't force it other places because the Supreme Court told them that they couldn't. But if they had been able to, they would have. And so many people were in favor of that. Yeah. Like that is fascism. That is not freedom. That is not democracy. That is not representative republic. A constitutional republic like we are a democratic republic. That's not what that is. But they want single party rule. And it's a party in particular that is so uniform, and you can't even disagree from within the party without getting knocked out, like RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, and others. So it's scary how out, like, not only what they're doing, but how blatant they are doing it.
Yeah. Well, the entire party structure has been redefined. And see that, I think that we've had a false dichotomy for so long. I mean, where do you think we lost so many of our rights? It was during the Patriot Act, and that was under Bush. Okay.
That's
that's
absolutely
where a lot of this stuff started, right? So it's been this uniparty system. And I think now what's happened is, it's like the liquids have kind of come apart, and like in a lava lamp, when the wax comes apart, it goes, and then all of a sudden the two other blobs come together and form. Like they've reformed, the parties have. And essentially the left has become the party of big business and telling you how to live your life and, basically treating you like a cog, all the while gaslighting you and telling you how much they give a shit about you and care. And then there's the other side that's demonized, which is the quote unquote right, or the conservative party, and that's where
the far right.
It's always the far right. It's never right. It's always the way extreme right.
Wait, you're a moderate Democrat? You're on the far right.
But it's nice to see that those parties, I think, have realigned, and the party of joy over there, constantly spreading joy, with their magic wand. It's ridiculous, and I think people are starting to see through that. And so you're seeing this whole party realignment. It's refreshing, and I hope something happens with it that sticks.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, what we hope for, like, even as a conservative and as somebody who's largely voted Republican for most of my life, the reality is I don't want a single party system either. Just because I'm a Republican, I don't want we need the back and forth between the part. Whether we need a two-party system or more than a two-party system is a whole nother story. But right now,
the two-party
like,
system
what we
wasn't working until Trump came along and broke it, because either side was acceptable. Whoever got voted in on either side, the military-industrial complex and all the powers that be, whatever that you want to call it, whatever flavor of conspiracy soup you eat, right? Those people, it was okay whether this guy or this guy, because we're going to have the same wars and we're going to keep everything going the same way we want. It doesn't matter. They're manipulatable. Trump, on the other hand, no. And that's where the whole thing came to a screeching halt.
Yeah, and again, there are a lot of people out there, and I don't have a problem with having more parties. I think having more parties could be good. I think that that this system, could work, but in order for it to work under the current situation,
many communities
you
are
need
still trying to clean up.
reform.
Businesses are still trying to rebuild. We lost 60%.
Sorry, I hit my space bar.
No worries.
All right, go ahead.
Not a problem, but. I mean, in order for the two-party system to work, we need reform within the Democrat Party. Like, Martin Luther, who is the great reformer, his goal when he created the Reformation and created Protestantism as a result, not himself but with others, he wasn't trying to destroy the Catholic Church. In fact, he was trying to reform it from within. And part of what happened in his movement of reforming, essentially creating the Protestant Reformation, is you had what's called the Counter-Reformation, which ended up also being good for the Catholic Church. There were some reforms that needed to be made, and there were other people who believed that didn't leave the Catholic Church, but they ended up, in order to try and save some of the people that were leaving, they ended up recognizing, no, we need to make these reforms. And so, even though he left, it was something that was ultimately good for Catholicism in the end. in a lot of ways. Some people might disagree, obviously, but this is what we're hoping happens in this situation. We're not hoping that everybody just votes Republican for the rest of their lives. We're hoping for more parity. We're hoping that the Democrat Party recognizes that they've gone too far. And obviously, as a conservative, I hope it's a shift back in a more conservative direction, a more middle of the road direction. Because one of my favorite, podcasters out there is Russell Brand, and one of the comments that he's made that I really appreciate is our battle here is not left versus right. It's the middle versus the periphery, right? The reality is like we're not looking for extreme on either end. The majority of people want a normal life. We don't want radicalism, like some of the things that are being pushed in the current administration. So anyway, speaking of radicalism, do you want to cue up that video on that we can have some fun conversation about?
Yeah, sure. Apparently something happened here, and is this in Maine? This is in Maine, right?
Yeah. This is a clip from the first congressional district. What do they call them? Wow. Debate. There we go. The debate. Yeah. And this is just a moment where eventually Ethan, I forgot his last name again, but Ethan Alcorn, he comments that Shelley Pingree is like, what is the term? Monologuing? No, it's not monologuing. It's what's the term when you're just speaking so that nobody else can speak?
Filibustering.
Yeah, basically he calls her out on filibustering. But anyway, this is one of her little filibusters, we'll call it, where she just goes off. And this is a small clip from that I thought was interesting. And I'm like, what in the world is she talking about? So I want to make sure other people see it and hear it.
Democrat speak. So warning, it's Democrat speak.
Yeah.
So.
We lost 60% of our working waterfront this year. Many communities are still trying to clean up. Many businesses are still trying to rebuild. We lost 60% of our working waterfront this year. Many communities are still trying to clean up. Many businesses are still trying to rebuild.
No, she just whipped that right in there. I'm sure she said a whole lot of other stuff, but she just...
Well, it reminds me of when I heard the clip of Al Gore back in the day saying, he's saying a list of things that they did, right? And he's saying, we took the initiative and invented the internet. And I'm like, you did what? You did what? Excuse me? What are you talking about? And this is another one of those things like, what are you talking about? We lost 60% of our working waterfront. I'm pretty sure if that happened,
somebody would have
heard about it.
Would have heard about it.
Like at some level, with the amount of like news and information I and some other people that I know consume in a day, I just don't think I would have missed that.
I don't know. What was it? The docks or the ships?
What is she talking about?
No, I mean the docks or the ships or I'm surprised we didn't see some poor lobsterman, weeping about his boat or his. I mean, what? Yeah, I don't know what she's talking about exactly.
They're weeping because of Noah, but that's another story.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But yeah, no, like I'm not really sure what she's talking about. I think she might be referencing a short-term loss when there was that natural disaster, that storm. And I think she was trying to tie that to global climate change. I don't call it warming anymore. But yeah, I mean, this is just like every time there's one of these things they're gonna throw it at global climate change is the problem, and they think they try to pretend that they're the only ones that care about the environment when the reality is Republicans and conservatives, we absolutely love the outdoors. We love the environment. We want to maintain it. But we actually want real solutions, not solutions that just line the pockets of the friends of the Democrats. These people with the wind and solar companies. Wind is the biggest fraud, I think, of all. It's just completely like so unreliable. But I was really glad Bobby Charles talked a lot about that on the last podcast, where he spent time talking about how the reality is we're never going to become in a place where we're always going to rely essentially on fossil fuels because it's just the other options are just not reliable and don't produce enough energy. I think we could increase other things by looking at nuclear, but in all reality, we're never going to be able to completely go away from fossil fuels until maybe there's some sort of a discovery. But electric vehicles is not the answer to every problem.
The battery technology is going to be it, and our battery solutions currently suck. Okay, and so therein lies the problem. And I'll tell you, I'm off grid right now. And I will tell you that I've had solar, and it blows up here in Maine, okay, especially in the winter. Now, it's windy as hell up here, and I thought about making a wind turbine, but I'm not going to make something that's 30, 40 foot in the air. Fortunately, up here, I think I can actually get away with it because of where we're at in our particular place to make like a barrel, turbine and actually generate some power out of it. But, I mean, it's not reliable. And I'm telling you, the batteries, you have to go really expensive. They're not cheap. And I went with less expensive marine batteries, and they go bad, and, you're constantly messing with it, and it's never the way it needs to be, and it doesn't really work as well as it should unless you spend a lot of money. And not to mention the storms. Did you see the storm damage in, I think, Texas and a couple of other places, man, where a tornado just rips through through the middle of it, and then hailstorm damaged one in another place, and they're full of toxic chemicals that all leach back into the ground.
Right. Yeah. No. Again, I'm. It's almost to the point where like I'm so tired of the conversation about electric vehicles because it's just so obvious if you're looking at it, the whole process holistically that with the current technology, this is not a feasible solution to shift everybody to in the near future. Not to mention the fact that like when you get into vehicles, this is one of my pet peeves in general because it gets at and I wish that I need to get somebody on who's got some more expertise in this field. But like when you look at the things that are required in order to sell a new vehicle, right? Like a new vehicle has so many requirements that are not like necessary. They're all things that they're like, well, data shows that this reduces, deaths and things like that. And it's like, okay, I get that, but is that a situation where we need to mandate it? What are like the other factors? What are the other things that are happening?
Do you remember the third tail light? Remember the third tail light? Like that's a good example of that.
It's a great example. And what's interesting is they did the data. They studied how having a third tail light. I remember this from business school, actually, from college where I studied business. And they were talking about how when they did the initial studies, it showed that basically if a vehicle had 3 lights, somebody was more likely to see it and stop. And they claimed that was because it had 3 lights. And it kind of was, but it was primarily because very few vehicles actually had 3 lights. And so because it was unique and different, people noticed it more. Right. But now that every vehicle has it, nobody notices it, and it has virtually no impact.
Again. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's the requirement of a backup cam. I thought of this specifically again recently because I was driving my neighbor's car, which is a completely fine car, no problem with it. Good car, should be on the road. Cars like this should be able to be sold in America, but you can't buy a new vehicle in the United States of America that doesn't have a backup cam. And I get it. Like I see the value, but like you have to think about who we're actually hurting by forcing people to buy vehicles with all these things that are, good enhancements, but shouldn't be required, in my opinion. And who you're harming are the poor.
Right.
The people who are already having a hard time being able to afford a used vehicle. And now you add on that, well, now all the vehicles are going to have to cost so much more because every one of those little restrictions and requirements adds to the cost. And so the automaker can't lose money, right? So it ends up being that the cost, and if we looked at data, we'd see how insane the increase in cost of vehicles are, which part of that is, supply chain stuff. Part of that is, inflation, but part of it is that they continually add on the requirements of what you need to have in a vehicle, right, to be able to buy a new vehicle in the United States of America. And it's oppressive. And it gets in the way of people starting out or people who are more poor being able to buy a new vehicle. And so now, as a result of your great ideas, they're driving worse vehicles.
It's not
because they can't afford the better ones.
It's not just the cars, Chuck. It's the same thing in the entire appliance industry. For example, if they raise the efficiency of a water heater and say, all right, look, I'm sorry, but we can no longer have standard water heaters that just blow, the fire goes up the tube because of gravity and it goes out and there's a baffle inside and the water gets hot, so on and so forth, and it shuts off and it's 85%, efficient, or an 88% or whatever. And they say, no, we can't have that anymore. They all have to be 92% or better, which means they now have to become condensing. They have to take out the latent heat out of the flue gases, right? And they have to squeeze that moisture out to turn it into water, right? Well, that means you have to have a fan. Before, you didn't need a fan. All you have is a thermocouple to run the water heater, right? And it makes its own electricity, keeps the valve open. Should the pilot go out, poof, it goes out, your water heater won't light, so you don't blow up. But now, all of a sudden, you have to have a water heater that has a fan. Well, what do you need when you have a fan? You got to have electricity. You got to be hooked to the grid. Do you understand? Now, it's the same thing. You've now taken away alternatives for people. What about high-efficiency washers? What about high-efficiency toilets that don't flush, by the way, well? And the high-efficiency washers, they don't work well, and the dryers don't dry the clothes as well. I mean, it's just everything they say they're improving. Are they really making our lives better, or are they making it, like you said, less affordable for normal people to even have a dishwasher? And even when you get it, it doesn't clean the gook off because you have to have this much water use, right? Because of California.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, absolutely. I mean, this is the point. This is why conservatives talk about deregulation, because there are unnecessary regulations. But then they say things like, "Well, you want people to die," and it's like, no, I want people to be able to live. I want people to be able to afford to live in this world and to be able to make those decisions. And yeah, they can be options. You can still buy a vehicle that has a backup cam, for instance. You shouldn't have to be required to do that in order to buy a new vehicle. Like, like the idea that should be required, to me, is it's wild. And again, that's just an example, but there are tons of things like that in the new vehicles. Like, you can't get they probably are going to stop making these, but one of the updates that I think they had when I switched from I had an older CRV and I got a new one, and I mean, now I have a RAV4, but my first CRV was like a 2012 or something like that, and it had normal cruise control. Now cruise control is that like really fancy stuff on these newer vehicles where it has to be able to detect the vehicle in front of you and the speed that they're going, and if you get close enough, it'll then match the speed of the vehicle that it's going, and all this stuff. And again, like, I'm not saying that these types of advances aren't good and don't have some benefits, but to require them is where I kind of draw the line. Again, going back to things that we've been talking about.
The insurance agency comes along and goes, you're going to get a better rate, man. You got to go buy that car that has that backup cam, and it also has that super duper fancy this and that and the other thing. I mean, look, you can't buy a car now without a damned alarm. And you hear them going off everywhere because nobody knows how to use them, because everybody's lost their key fob, and so they're getting in their car with the other key, like me, But we're all paying for that shit, and it's a bunch of racket. Because what happens? Nobody pays attention. You hit the panic button on a key.
Well, that's
who is going to come help you?
Yep.
Nobody.
Right. Well, and nobody pays attention, but also, like, because of a lot of these enhancements, they're making it so that you don't have to pay attention when you drive, right? And
that's
it's not
idea.
like, and that's because it's going to take care of it on its own. It's going to tell me when I need to brake. If I need to brake, I don't have to worry about it. I can just go back and play on my phone, right? And this is what people are doing. And so anyway, it like, again, overregulation, bad. I think we need to peel it back a little bit and make people's again, more personal responsibility, more ownership, and more options for me to be able to do what I need to do.
I think so. Yeah. Do you want to? All right. Yeah. So do you want to talk about illegal voting in the election? You want to talk about that now? Well, look at a little Jake Tapper.
Yeah. Let's talk about it. Yeah.
All right.
Do you have do you have a clip, or
I got a couple of clips, man. So we got about two or 3 minutes, and so we got. This was about a week ago, so this is not new news, but I think it's very much at the heart and core of what we're talking about, because this shows you how insane and the insanity of what we live in today. Okay, and just to set this up, is what this is. They got a box in Virginia, right, where Glenn Youngkin is governor, and people check the box, and they say, I'm not a citizen, or I am a citizen, or they leave it unchecked. There's 3 options there, right? Yep. And so they're removing these people from the rolls. And guess what? The Federal Department of Justice is suing the state of Virginia to say you can't do that because you started doing it like 2 days past some deadline or some nonsense like that. So that's what's going on in the news, and Jake Tapper's having a discussion with Glenn Youngkin about that. So let's watch that and talk about it.
This is a law that's been on our books since 2006. It was a law that was signed by then Democrat Governor Tim Kaine, and it requires our election process and governors to use DMV data when an individual self-identifies as a non-citizen, and there is a match with that person on the voter rolls, to then notify that person that they have 14 days to affirm that they're a citizen or not, and if they're not, then they are removed. This process has been in place since 2006. We've just had recent Democrat governors like Terry McAuliffe and Ralph Northam use this exact same process within the 90-day period because it is individualized. An individual starts the process by self-identifying as a non-citizen. And therefore, as governor, I have an obligation, no discretion, to then run the process to notify that person through our registrar that they have 14 days to clear it up. And if they don't clear it up, they're going to be removed from the voter rolls. The big question I have is, given the clarity of the constitutionality of what I just described, both at the federal level and the state level, and laws at the federal level and the state level that not only require me to do this, but are focused on the fact that these are individual steps that start with someone identifying as a non-citizen, why is it that anyone could argue that a process that removes non-citizens off of our voter rolls is anything else other than common sense and constitutional? And that's my frustration with this whole process, which is it started 25 days before a presidential election. They could have started it a long time ago. We would have sorted this out because I firmly believe they are wrong. But this seems far more political than otherwise, simply because of the fact this has been going on since 2006, according to law. And they chose 25 days before an election in Virginia in order to assert something which really is inconsistent with the process that we're doing.
Yeah, so like that, but then it goes on 2 minutes later, and then we can talk about it after he wraps it up, because I've got another clip that goes on.
Why not just honor that 90-day period?
Well, let me just first begin. It's anything but a purging program. It begins with someone identifying themselves as a non-citizen. And I guess I would posit back to you, do you think that non-citizens, when they've self-identified as a non-citizen, should stay on the voter roll and therefore be in a position to potentially vote in a presidential election?
I don't think any non-citizen should vote. How are they self-identifying? How does that happen?
They actually tick a box that says I am a non-citizen, or they do not answer the question that they are a citizen, and therefore they self-identify that they are not a citizen in the United States of America. And this is why this is so out of bounds in my mind from the Justice Department. They fully understand this. They understand the process starts with a person self-identifying as a non-citizen, and then there is a match with that person's name on the voter rolls, and they are given not just one, but up to 3 times in order to try to cure it. And this is why I find this to be a very, very unreal moment that is stunning, that they filed this suit 25 days before a presidential election, when in fact this has been going on in accordance with our Constitution, the federal Constitution, and state law since 2006.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm at a loss for words. I mean, it's so incredibly obvious to me that only U.S. citizens should vote because it's the Constitution. It's the Constitution of the United States. In each state requires that only U.S. citizens would vote. Right. That's just is so obvious. Right. So obviously that's the rule, and they're just following the rule, and they're being sued by the Department of Injustice.
It doesn't make sense. The whole time they've always been telling us no, they can't vote. No, they can't vote. No, they can't vote. No, they can't vote. And then they say it's already illegal to vote. To vote if you're a non-citizen, right? So here you happen to have in this particular state a mechanism where people, they didn't game the system. They just said no, I'm not. Yeah. And they're not allowed to take them off. That's nuts. That tells you evil intention right there.
Well, again, it begs the question of why in the world they would be stopping that, right? If you want to, again, they can make the argument that but give me a good reason why that person should stay on the voting roll. That's what I need at this point. What is the reason for having this person stay on the voting rolls, and there isn't one.
And not
right?
a technicality,
So,
not a, oh, it was 2 days past
right.
deadline or some crap like that. No, an honest
No.
to God reason, because, it's a club, man. And it's like club, has its membership, right? Privileges.
Yep.
And they can't be for everybody. Otherwise, there's no point to belonging to the club.
Right. You essentially end up making citizenship meaningless if it's and like the reality is we shouldn't be surprised, right? So there are two things. One, they want non-citizens to vote, right? Like they actually like they're I mean, I don't know if it was here or in the country, but one of these places they actually created legislation to give non-citizens the right to vote. I think it was here in the state of Maine, but I can't. I have to go look that up. But there are people that are putting forth legislation in our country to allow for non-citizens to have the right to vote. And it's out there in popular culture, and so this is something that they're pushing for. So if they believe this anyway, and they also believe that it's going to help them, right? Like let's be honest, we know human nature. The reality is human nature is that people are going to do things that they shouldn't do, right? And if there's a way to do something and it's going to benefit them, there are going to be people that are going to want to do it and are going to do it. Like that's a reality. Like the idea that they were trying to push after 2020 that the idea that voter fraud is like a problem in America is they thought that they said that was crazy because it didn't fit their narrative at the time. It fit their narrative in 2016, in which they tried to say that there are all these problems. They had concerns around mail-in ballots and this, that, and the other thing, but all of a sudden they didn't in 2020. But the reality is human nature, people who want something are going to do it, whether it's legal or not. And so given that reality, the fact that they're pushing for this seems to suggest that they have, evil intent. They have the intention of breaking the law. And what's interesting too, like, I don't know if you've been following this, Tim, but they, the Maine Wire's been doing stuff around, they had a whistleblower send over some information that allowed them to identify that there are people who are non-citizens, both illegal and legal, that are receiving, like, I think it was Maine Care, and are registered to vote. It was cross-referenced in the registered to vote.
And vote and already voted, apparently.
Yes, have voted. Maybe not necessarily. We don't know if it was in this election, but they have voted in the past. We have that data. And so people literally have voted. They've been telling us it's not happening. And Aaron Frey, instead of looking into it and getting people who like recognizing that this data is all available to them within the state of Maine system, is asking Steve Robinson to release information to him and specifically the names of the people. It's like, look, you have access to all this data. If you guys can't do a search and figure out who these people are, then you're failures. Obviously, somebody who works for you was able to do this, and they leaked the information to the Maine Wire. So, like, you have the capacity to do this, and you're intentionally not doing it because because then you'll have to show what you find. And the American people want to know, the people of Maine want to know what you find. They want to know how many people. And there was a letter that was written by Billy Bob Falkingham, who is the House minority leader for the Republicans, basically saying, hey, Janet Mills, we expect something to be done here. We want something to be done. I think he said something along the lines of, we don't expect you to necessarily to do this, but the expectation of your job is that they should do that. If there's evidence of people voting illegally, it is the responsibility of the government to stop that. And instead, it sounds like, according to something that Steve Robinson posted, that they're looking to get these people in trouble. And Steve's making the argument that he doesn't even think these people are voting. He thinks other people are using their information and voting on their behalf. Who knows? Either way, illegal votes have been cast in the state of Maine. And what is our government doing about it? Diddly.
Yeah, well, Janet Mills, if she stumbles out from her storm shelter between the second and third scotch, she might get the memo that, that some of this is going on, but she could care freaking less, man. That woman is a train wreck. I mean, I can't believe I've seen a state just deteriorate like it has with that and the trans issues we talked about the other day in like 6 years, man. And our schools are dead last. It's nuts, man. It's nuts. And so, it's scary. And then, of course, bringing in all the illegal immigrants is clearly there to tip the demographic scale so that the power is going to be the way it is. And this election is like our only hope to turn any of this around, in my opinion. I mean, still, we have to do a lot of stuff locally and everything, but it's got to start, there's got to be stuff done at the federal level as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we got to do some stuff at the federal level. We got to do some stuff locally. First thing you can do, go out and vote. I voted today. I brought my neighbor. She's a person who typically does not vote. She always talks about wanting to, but she's always stressed out about going to the polls on voting day. I was like, we can go to the city hall today. We can vote. She's like, that was easy. So get out and vote. Bring a friend. You can do it. It's quick. It's easy. And one of the things that we've been talking about with that is, a lot of people are like, and actually I had another friend of mine who he's one of our avid listeners to the podcast, not while it's live, but he listens to it afterwards. But so shout out to Adam. So when I was talking to him, he was like, I'm just going to go vote on voting day. And I was like, well, you never know. It's like something could happen that could, what if you end up having the flu on the day of the election and you just literally can't get out of bed and then you miss voting, right? So it's really easy to go down to City Hall to vote. If you haven't registered, you can register right there. Just takes a couple of minutes. You can get everything done. You can vote, and that, again, get out, vote. That's the big picture. But yeah, we need to fix things at the local level. We need to fix things at the national level. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. We used to work in the financial field, and people still reach out to me to ask questions about these things. And as we were having this conversation, she was sharing, she lives in California, and she was sharing that she's a teacher, and they're actually bringing in teachers from the Philippines. They're giving them, work visas to bring them in to teach because they can't, so like on top of, illegal immigration, there's some really interesting, and they're bringing them in and paying them less money than they would pay Americans. And, it's really interesting. And I understand that we have a bit of a problem here in the United States in education where teachers are having a really rough go of it, and they're leaving. But amongst other things, like one of the challenges about a lot of these teachers is that they don't teach like, in some ways, maybe this is good, but they don't have the same teaching standards over there that we have here. Right. So over there, it's like they're back, 40 years ago where they just give a lecture. And if you don't understand it, they're like, why did you not listen? And so like there are a lot of problems on top of illegal immigration that we're importing people essentially to take jobs that should be done by Americans because we're losing them because we're not taking good care of them. Too much money in the education system goes to administration, and other things, and not enough of it goes to the teachers. And we've probably talked about this before because it's a big point of my campaign, which is, Maine is ranked right around, it's 36th in the nation in education. Like, so sometimes in some cases we're ranked 50th in some categories, right? But overall, we're ranked somewhere between like 36th to 40 something. We also pay our teachers about the 36th most in the nation. So we're ranked right about the same place that we pay our teachers. Do you think if we pay our teachers better while not increasing the total cost, but reducing administration, there are a lot of strategies that we could put in place to do that, reducing the cost of administration and making sure that the money goes where it should go, which is to the teachers. Do you think maybe we might have an improvement in our education? The Dems are also arguing for increasing the teachers, but they're not looking to reduce cost anywhere else. That's just how they operate. For a Democrat, it seems like at this point, there's no way to cut a budget. You just need to increase revenue. That's what my opponent, she was talking about this because she used to be on the city committee, the school committee, and people were a lot of people are upset about taxes in the town. And she's like, oh, we can't, there's really nowhere to cut. We go through that budget with a fine tooth comb. And I'm just sorry. I don't believe I can look at a $50 million budget and say that there's nothing there to cut. Like Like, I'm sorry. I've looked at people with a $2,000 budget, and there's places to cut, right? So every budget, every person, every organization has things that they can cut. And so, like, the idea that the schools and everything, that there's no way to cut spending is crazy. But this is what the Democrats want you to believe, that there's never any fat to trim. The answer is always more money. The problem is, the more you tax the people, the less, the more it hurts the economy, and in the long run will actually reduce the amount of taxes that are paid. That there's actually, like, by reducing taxes, you can stimulate the economy, and then the government also brings in more tax revenue. Anyway, that was a little nice little rant for you.
These are they're pet projects. I mean, a lot of these things, or some of these places the monies are spent, are ideological things. They're also, there's no incentive there whatsoever to look at programs that are not productive, okay, that are just there. The whole idea is, well, we can't make the budget go down, because then we need that to say, yes, we spend it all. We got to spend every penny of it too. There's that phenomenon, that goes on, because, you have to have that money back. And I'll tell you, somebody like Elon Musk, right? He's going to go in there and doge it, right? Just like, and it wouldn't take an Elon Musk, okay? I'll tell you, I could do, or you could do a great job to go in there and just go, all right, bring the books in here. Let's sit down, man. Get the coffee. Go get the donuts. And we're not getting out of here until we pretty much get an idea where all the money's going. And I'll tell you, man, you could definitely allocate funds into different places, but,
absolutely,
everybody's going to get their pet projects, stepped on, and this, that, and the other thing. And people don't want that. And plus, like I said, you're going to also find out the scary places they spend the money, which is on, like, things they really don't want to advertise, right?
Yeah, MK Ultra and things like that, which I think is not an official program at the moment, but it was an official program in the past.
I'm talking about, like, the books and the transing and the ideological stuff, which is the cultural Marxism.
There's that too, but
that type of thing.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Well, they're spending a lot of money, like the school committees and the school boards and whatnot around the state are spending a lot of money on DEI. But talking about cutting spending, I was having a conversation with someone recently who's former military, and he was basically saying that if you told these, like, platoon leaders or whatever, the sergeants, or that they needed to do the exact same training that they're doing now, but at a substantially lower cost, but that you would give those people, the people running that program, like a bonus for cutting the budget, they would easily be able to do that, because he was saying how much he threw away, how much stuff every single year that was good and usable, and he didn't need a new one, that they were throwing away. So the idea, again, anybody who's worked for the government and is paying attention, anybody who's been involved in the military, knows that there's a substantial amount of waste. It doesn't mean there are things that we need to spend money for, right? There are things that don't need to be cut, but there are things that absolutely can be cut. And the idea that this is crazy, like the idea that we can actually, that they're basically presenting that the only solution is more revenue, and any other perspective is like simple-minded and ignorant, is absolutely wild to me, because, again, like, we have examples of ways that we can cut spending. And again, you talk about pet projects, like right now, a lot of the things that they're proposing, like we talk about these bond issues, right? Every year there are bond issues, and people are not going to listen to me. They're probably going to vote yes. They're like, yeah, sure, let's take on some more debt by the state. Let's just vote in favor of all these bond issues. But we're at a place right now where, because of the rise in inflation, everybody's having to pay closer attention to where they spend their money. And yet the government's like, well, not us.
Right.
We're just going to keep spending more money. We're going to, try to issue more debt at a time where everybody else is having to cut their spending. Like, do you understand? Like you also, government, have to recognize that you need to slow down sometimes. That right now is not a time to increase taxes on people who already are struggling to survive. There are essential services that need to be maintained, but there's a lot that can be cut, and it needs to be, especially in the current environment where everybody else is struggling. You can't tax them to death. It will harm the economy in really horrific ways. People just aren't paying attention. And
we need more transparency, and we need audits, and we need to see these audits, because like the government, a number of agencies, including the Pentagon, right, cannot pass even their own internal audits. Okay,
this is another fun thing.
Corruption is something I didn't bring up, like talking about looking at the school budget. How much corruption is there? Like, how many people get a certain contract to the school district to do this, that, and the other thing, and it's this buddy or that buddy, and it's overpriced, and there's kickbacks, and all that shit going on.
Yeah, sure. Tons of that. And then to go back to the military and the Pentagon, Ethan Alcorn, I was actually surprised in watching the debate, with Shelley and Ron Russell. Ethan Alcorn, in some cases, he sounded like he was a little bit like he was having a hard time, thinking on the spot. Like, I don't think he's like a professional public speaker and stuff like that. So if you were not paying close attention, you might be like, oh, that guy doesn't look like he knows what's going on. But when you actually heard the content of what he was saying, he made a lot of sense. And this was one of the areas where he was talking about, they're like, where are you going to cut the budget? And it's like, first of all, like, we don't all have access to the budget. So how can somebody who's running for political office know exactly in US Congress where they're going to be able to cut the budget? Right. Like, that's number one, right? That's just, do you understand how silly that is? Like, and as he pointed out, they keep failing their audit. Like, every single year, the Pentagon fails its audit. So we don't even know where money is going. Every single year, there's money that goes missing, right? It just goes missing. So how can he tell you where to cut it? Well, first of all, we need to get an audit where they pass. We need to figure out where all this money's going, and people and heads need to roll. People need to be fired. If they can't account for where that money's going, they need to go, right? And we need to figure out where this waste is happening and where the money's going that it shouldn't be going. And so anyway, like I said, he made a lot of really good points. I think, Ron Russell was basically like, we need to cut the budget, but we need to spend more money on military. And I'm like, nope. I'm not really with you there. And Shelley Pingree was just like, well, we need to raise taxes on the super rich, a typical, Democrat approach, tax the rich, and not really much content outside of that. Nothing about there being any way that we can, cut spending. And so, yeah, so Ethan Alcorn actually made some really good points. If you haven't gone and watched it, go and watch it. It's it's on YouTube somewhere. I have like a short clip on my X page, Chuck Ellis 1983. Feel free to check it out there too. But yeah, cool. It's crazy.
Yeah, man.
The waste in our country, and here in the state of Maine as well. It's fun too going out and going door to door. One of my we didn't really do a lot of door to door, but like we were putting up some signs, and a lot of people don't know the laws, right? And I was talking about this. Like, this is also a law that I don't know, that you can put up lawn signs in what are called like public, essentially what's called public spaces, right? And, if you own a house, and that house, your lawn goes and there's a sidewalk, and on the other side of the sidewalk, right, there's a patch of grass. Mm-hmm. You don't own that patch of grass. No. It's on the other side of the sidewalk. It might be out in front of your house, and you might not like the idea, for instance, that there's a lawn sign of a politician that you don't like there. But the reality is you're not legally allowed to take that sign and do anything with it. So we had somebody try and tell us that we couldn't put that on his property. And it's like, oh, well, this is actually not your property. This is the state. This is city property. And then there was this argument and debate, and we ended up putting it down in front of somebody else's house. But there was this conversation about, in addition to people not knowing the laws, like that one, there's this conversation about one of the comments I remember was that the Republicans just care about the rich, and it's like, I'm so tired of this right now, because this is like 15 years ago. Like, the reality is, if the Republicans cared about the rich, right, the greedy rich that people are all mad at, then why are 80% of the wealthiest people in the world and the wealthiest neighborhoods in the United States of America, why are they all giving boatloads of money to the Democrats? Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Right? Like, help me understand that. Well, it's just because they care about climate change. Right. Okay. If the Republicans were doing it, it's just greed. But if they're doing it to help the Democrats, it's because they believe in the ideology. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. If you do, maybe get your head examined.
Yeah. 3/4 of the money is fully now on the Democrat side. All the money from big business, most of the dark money, all that stuff. But of course, the Democrats' playbook always is projection, right? They always project upon us. Like, for example, right now, if you're following the presidential campaign, apparently, according to the Harris campaign, Donald Trump he's wearing himself out. He doesn't have the stamina to make it. He's canceling interviews. He's hiding out. He wants to avoid the press. And I'm like, what are you talking about, man? You guys are lunatics. He's out there cooking and slinging fries, man.
Yeah, did you see the meme that had Donald Trump with like a roller, like a paint roller, and it doesn't say McDonald's anymore; it just says Donald's.
That's good.
Yeah, no,
He
he's out
owned it,
there.
man.
You know,
He
he's and one of my favorite things from like the little clips that I saw of that is like he gave somebody some food and they're like, this is just so great that you're coming here doing this for ordinary people like us. And he's like, you're not ordinary, right? You know, this is his attitude and his mantra. Like, the guy has flaws, I get it, but like he actually really does care about the average person, more so than any other politician I've ever I can think of, any other president that I've seen in my lifetime. And so
somebody said, well, it was staged, man. It was like totally staged. I was like, well, yeah. I mean, he's a former president. We're 2 weeks away from an election. The people are vetted. They came through the line. What are you telling me? The Democrats never stage anything? We've never seen anyone on a sound set or, any of that stuff. They're more orchestrated than anything. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Those were normal people he was talking to. This lady, Brazilian lady, comes through. She says, please make sure that this country don't make like Brazil. Please, Mr. President. Okay, and he was just charming, just like he always is. And I think they're doing a good job this time getting that out there. Not to mention, it was really an awesome line to say, I have now officially worked at McDonald's 15 minutes longer than Kamala Harris.
No, that's great. He's got to get the jabs in. That's just his personality.
Yeah, sure it is.
But get a couple body shots in.
Yeah, man. But I think that hopefully they're doing a better job. They're putting him in different places, like he did that town hall with all women, which I think was very good and very productive and everything. And the more that she gets out there, she's just shrew and vapid. Okay, I mean, there's nothing there. Yeah. And the more she talks, I mean, we've been keeping an eye on the poly market trend. Let me see what's going on over there. See if I can find it. Let me see. Where is it at? What is that?
A poly market trend? What's that?
Yeah, we've been watching poly market. It's the betting markets. And,
okay.
Yeah. And so let me see if I can find it. I had it this morning. There it is. I'll refresh it and let you know where it is. This last time I checked, it was 61.7. Let's do a refresh. So Donald Trump is slated to win the election still, 61.6% to 38.2% for Kamala. So he's doing very well. It's up 1.7%. That's good. So, but so what's interesting is they're still calling it a close race, Chuck. They're saying that he's only favored to win the popular vote by 38% to 62%. So it's actually almost flipped over on its head. So very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting because I think too. I've been talking about this with a couple of people, including my wife, because she's, despite the fact that she's still in Kenya, she's very engaged in American politics, and as many of them over there are actually, and many of them favor Donald Trump, but she's very interested and engaged, especially in my race. She's actually going to be making a little campaign video for me that I'm gonna get to post soon. But anyway, we were talking about this, and like there are two reasons basically that somebody shows up to vote for a candidate, right? And the number one reason is because they like them, like that they actually like that candidate, right? The second reason is because they really hate or they dislike enough the other candidate that's enough to get them out to vote, right? So on Donald Trump's side, you have that people love him, and you have that people hate and can't stand Kamala Harris.
Right.
On the other side,
not so much.
nobody really. I don't like. maybe her family loves her, maybe. But like, I've not heard anybody who's actually rational and making any sense and not just trying to convince themselves, that actually likes Kamala Harris. Like, in fact, Kamala Harris knows that you don't like Kamala Harris, which is why her response as to why that you should vote for her is because Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump. Like, her whole mantra is, I'm not Donald Trump.
Right.
And so she doesn't have anything more to offer. And so people who vote for her will vote for her because she is not Donald Trump. They will not vote for her because they like her. So she's only got people that are anti-Trump voting for her, whereas he's got people who love him and don't like her. And so I think that's going to lead, I'm hoping that's going to lead to people not showing up to the polls who would have otherwise voted for her. And in using that logic, there's a really good chance. I mean, I think I would say that he's going to win this election, and I think it's going to look more like a landslide if you get out to vote. If you don't get out to vote,
right.
There's another story.
Right.
Get out to vote.
Then it's going to be like,
so we
that
need
red
to make
wave
sure
that
we
never
get out there. We cast our votes. But as long as that happens, I think he wins. I think he wins handily, and it could also, here in the state of Maine, have a significant impact, because if something like that happens where you don't have a lot high voter turnout from the people who would normally vote Democrat, you could have a lot of these House and Senate races be skewed to the right as a result of that, which is what I'm hoping for. But in 2022, we thought we were going to have this really big red wave, and we didn't. And one of the most significant factors was Republicans didn't show up to vote. So vote. Have you heard that on this podcast before? I think I've been telling people maybe that they should get out and vote. Is that right?
Yeah, I think once or twice. Yeah, man. But I tell you, but why wouldn't you want to vote for this?
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
This is why people don't love her, right? I mean, you hear this nonsense. We didn't. I'd be just fine
if that. I would vote in favor of that if it was part of a comedy show.
Yeah, exactly.
I would vote for
Well, now, I don't know if you saw the latest barrage, and it's about a dozen times she said it, and she looks real angry, and I think she did it with, sort of said that with Brett Baer, but not as angry, is that he can never, ever become president and be behind this seal again, and of course she's doing it in that shrill, shrieking thing that she has, where she's going into falsetto like Obama is, and I'm like going, and you see people in the back. They were listening to Obama the other day, and Obama's talking, and they're all going like this. It was weird because they're all spending their money on Amazon for the gift card they got in the way in, because they don't really want to be there, right? You go to a Trump rally, people are like, "Wow!"
Yeah, you just don't have the enthusiasm.
No, the voter enthusiasm gap, and I think the biggest way that we've seen that is the which poll is it? Is it Reuters? I think who says who voter identification is way up for Republicans. Okay. And that is people identifying as saying, I am not this, but this. And that doesn't count all the people that are Democrat. They're going to go in there and go like this. Hey, and push the button for Donald Trump, right? Because I'm convinced there are still people out there. People are bolder now. They're wearing their red hats more than they ever have. I see that more. Yep. But still, it's not as bold as it could be. Like, for example, you're talking about signs out here locally. I don't have a sign to put out, but there's nothing in St. Albans. One? Yeah, man. Yeah, man. I could use one. We don't have nothing in St. Albans. We got a nice little place there where they got the flag and the little baby library they got there, and we can just stick it right up there, man.
I might could get you some signs.
Yeah, give me a couple of signs, man. We need them bad here. We got nothing. Zero. Zap.
Yeah. The part of the problems down here is, again, people keep putting them up and then people keep taking them down. I've been helping in Westbrook, distributing them around both in public spaces and on people's yards.
I'll find my trap cam, dude. I will find my trap cam. I'll put out the sign.
Well, I was really disappointed. I went to somebody that I initially delivered a sign to was like, yeah, they stole my sign. Can you bring another? And I'm like, yep, I'll be over. And, he was telling me that he had a camera and he'd recorded it. And I think he had at one point posted it to Facebook, but then he had pulled it down and his wife had deleted the photo. And I'm like, no, the video. And I'm like, no, I would have loved that. I would have posted that to the internet. Like
they found a stack. They found a stack of Trump signs behind a Democrat office in one of the offices in Maine somewhere. I don't know which one it was. I can't remember for the life of me.
Yep.
But yeah, they found a stack right all neatly piled up behind the Democratic office.
Yep.
They cheat,
Well,
man.
you know.
They cheat. You know, it's like I've thought about, there's a couple of places around here. They got that stupid Hillary, you know, when they invented that hate has no home here, except for hating Christians and conservatives, you know. So they're like, and I like look at it and they got a whole line of them, like 6 or 8 of them. I mean, just off the shoulder, man. I got a Jeep. I could go, and they'd be gone in a second. I wouldn't have to look at them no more. But I'm like going, no, you can't do that, man. They do that. That's not what we do.
That's right. I'm not saying that there's not 1 or 2 people on the Republican side that would go out and do that, but when you look at it across the board, so much more often it's the Democrats who are doing that are taking down Trump stuff. What I heard is that there's some little old lady that had gone around in the middle of the night and taken a whole bunch of Trump signs down off of people's lawns and public spaces here in Westbrook.
Doing it too. Yeah, city workers doing it too. Man, when I was a kid, I burned a campaign sign on someone's lawn. I spent a week in juvie for that crap.
Yeah, yeah, and you can get a fine for it here, but people are just not getting caught because they're and then unfortunately when you do have a video of somebody, it gets deleted. But anyway, yeah, no, it's the party of I like to call it the party of peace and love, as they tout themselves to be, are only peaceful and loving if you agree with them. You know, if you disagree with them, you know, and this is not every single Democrat, obviously, but like, again, we're making, gross generalizations, which is what we do
to a degree.
And like, at large, that's the type of behavior that you're seeing. Like there's been no video that I've seen of a Republican like grabbing a Harris sign and stabbing it. Right. I have not seen that video, but we do have a video of a woman like viciously stabbing a Trump sign. Like, I'm not sure how you think that helps in any way, lady. Maybe you should go see your doctor. Don't know, but
ask your doctor about Paxil and Wellbutrin.
Or you could look up Nicole Shanahan's video. It kind of helps with TDS, and you could experience independence, the drug of common sense independence. But yeah, it's just an interesting time. It's funny. I think I've been sending out some things. I talked about it a couple weeks ago now about I'd sent something out or my campaign on the issue of transgenderism and I had it had been a lot of like pushback and stuff like that, and I was feeling like stressed because I don't like people hating me. I want to be loved by everybody. And I've been thinking a lot about that. And number one, I'm having a lot more fun just being like, I am the resistance to the insanity that's going on down here. And if they want to hate me and be mad at me, I don't care. But also, like, if they want to hate me for standing up for children, like, it's far worse what's happening to children than what's happening, than a couple of people disliking me. And so come at me. I don't care. Like, the social conditioning that they've put into me, partly through my job and through all these other places, it's being eroded as I step out and follow what I believe it is that God is calling me to do. And I'm shedding the weight of their social conditioning. And I have to admit that even though like I knew what was going on and I knew that it was wrong, a lot of my behavior was still dictated. I was still that guy, and probably still am to the at the moment. And I need to work on this, that if I'm in a restaurant talking about this in Portland, I'm talking quietly. And it's like, why? They're not talking quietly.
Right.
Why shouldn't I just say what I believe? I'm not attacking anyone. I'm not going after anyone. I'm just speaking what I believe to be the truth, which is what they're doing. And they feel fine about it, but they try to condition us and make us feel bad because they're going to go after us and they're going to try to make our lives miserable. And I just don't care at this point. Come at me, leave the kids alone.
Yeah, man. Just always have your camera there ready to hit record in case somebody overhears your conversation in that restaurant, because that's the day and age we live in. But, my wife and I do that. When I go on into public, I tell you, I've been in this space for a while, and my wife is kind of more like you. And so we'll be just sitting there, blah, 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 and I'll be talking, and she'll like, shh, keep your voice down. And I'm like, why? Okay, I mean, I'm in here and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? If somebody overhears me, maybe they need to hear that, and whatever. It's like I'm not going to live my life in fear. But you're right. It's kind of that oppressive thing everywhere, and I think people are shaking it off, right? And I think one of the things we've talked about is that whole thing is language. I've been sorting my way through all of this, okay? But I also realize that Christians have been fooled into thinking that we're supposed to be nice. Or if we get angry and we say something, and then they go, well, you're not supposed to use language like that. You're a Christian. And we go, oh, you're right. And we retreat into what their definition is, right? And it puts us in a box. And now their box is, hey, you don't want to be doing that stuff outside the walls of that church, man. You go and worship inside where we can't see you. It's like, that ain't the way it's supposed to be. Salt and light, buddy. That's what we're here for.
Yep.
So it's interesting, and it takes. How old are you? Yeah.
I'm about to be 41, actually.
Yeah. Well, you still got some time to mature. It takes a while, man. It does. It's some things.
Hey, we're all a work in progress, right?
Man, I'm learning things at 62 years old. Still, I'm eating humble pie. I'll tell you. My challenges are just different.
Well, I think a lot of ways to overcome this stuff, right, is just to hang out with people who just don't care. And I don't mean don't care in like a negative sense, like they would do bad things, but like aren't worried about what other people might think about them. And there's this guy that me and my buddy Ryan are friends with, and he's been going out with us. His name is Vance. He works at the post office. People ask him because his name says Vance. They're like, you're not voting for him, right? And he's like, are you kidding? I absolutely am. And like, he is just like so who he is wherever he goes, that like I would, that whole kind of me feeling cautious and uncomfortable, which is still there to a little bit, going out to a restaurant with him. He's not only is he like wearing, some MAGA stuff, but he's also, and people don't know what to do with him because he's like a, I don't know, 6'2" or whatever, black guy, in his 60s. And he just doesn't care. And he's just loudly saying truth in a restaurant, and like you'd think that we'd get more backlash, but in fact what happens is like either people don't say anything, or the person that ends up saying something be like, go Trump, fight, and like just being around somebody who just doesn't care, and he's a nice guy though. When he engages with people, we actually went to some doors with him, and he's really polite, but he is also like, why in the world would you vote for that woman? What has she ever done? What are her credentials? How has she earned this? And he does it in a way that's like really polite, but he's just firmly who he is. And like I think this is one of the things, like we learn so much more through interactions with other people than we do by reading books. And so if you need to grow in a particular area, hang out with somebody who doesn't need to grow in that area. So hang out with somebody who is really good at that, and it'll it can help. So anyway, that's been one of the fun things for me, going around and putting up these Trump signs around Westbrook. We got a bunch more too, so we're gonna have some more fun.
Have you ever heard that song between I think it's Toby Keith and who's the other one that sings Hillbilly Bone? You ever seen the video to Hillbilly Bone? Get your Hillbilly Bone on. You gotta, after you leave this, you gotta Blake Shelton. It's Blake Shelton and I think Toby Keith. And they said go into this swanky restaurant, right? And of course, they're hillbillies, right? And they sing this song, Get Your Hillbilly Bone on, and everybody's like looking at him, giving him funny looks. Of course, by the end of the video, everybody's laughing and dancing and woo and having a good time, because it's like secretly inside, everybody's really like with you, right? And I like you're talking about it. It's really nice to be with a person that's like that and to go, look, I just don't care, and not be a jerk for Jesus or be a jerk for Trump and out there in people's faces, but just be you, right? Yeah, it's time to start taking that ground back, right? I think.
We need, like, if there's one last thing outside of vote that I would leave people with today is like, we need more people to stand up. It doesn't mean you need to be a jerk, right? It doesn't mean you don't need to be a jerk to stand up for truth. You just need to not continually take it, not have them continually like be berating you. I mean, we're seeing it in the court cases where these people who are fired for instance, not using pronouns, they're winning lawsuits because it's illegal. They cannot discriminate against you for your religious beliefs or your values, which is essentially what they're doing. I don't agree with that. I don't believe it. I'm not going to use the pronouns that you prefer simply because you try to force me to do it. I'd be more likely to do it
I'll
if
tell
you
you,
asked me and you were kind. I'm not going to do it.
I won't do it at all, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Okay, because here's the thing: we've all seen 1984. Okay, to use your preferred pronoun, okay, is no different than saying it's called compelled speech. Is no different than the state says, well, 2 and 2 equals 5.
Yep.
You will now say, when you say 2 plus 2, you will say 5. And you think that's way different, but those two things are identical because they're both compelled speech. And that's very, very dangerous place to be.
Yeah. And so we need more people. I know that you're worried about your job and this, that, and the other thing, but guess what? Like if you get fired over this, there is a lawsuit, right? You can, I don't love suing people, but if they fire you for something like this, or if they continue to give you a hard time about it, that's on them.
Yeah.
And there's pain along the way, but there's a lot more pain if we continue to give in to that, to the social pressures and the ways in which they're trying to compel our speech and our action, and all these other things. And so we need to stand up, not just vote. We also need to stand up, and we also need to engage, as I like to say, with our neighbors and build relationships with people. And that's the way that we take back our country, we take back our state. So
I agree.
That's all I have. I don't know if you've got anything else for the people, Truthslinger.
That's it.
We do have another special guest. Pretty soon we're just going to call them guests, rather than special guests. But we will have another special guest with us next on Thursday. Jack Ducharme. He's a current legislator. He's from the town of Madison. He actually, I used to play football with his son because I graduated from Madison High. Known him for many years, and he's one of the House reps from up there, and he'll be with us. And we'll have some fun questions for him and let him talk. And the show will be more about him than us.
Cool.
Like we did with our previous guest. So
great. Well, definitely
looking forward to that.
Yeah, send me his information so I can do a little better job promoting, and we'll get some information out. And hopefully Waz can see it, promote it for us, and we'll have a good time on Thursday at 4 Eastern Standard Time. So it was good as always, Chuck. I enjoyed it. The banter was great. Always good, and I always learn something talking to you. You keep up the good work out there. Keep campaigning. And if anybody wants to help Chuck, again, it's at Chuck Ellis 1983 on X. My name is Tim. I am your Truthslinger and Chuck's producer, and that over there is your swamp guy, Chuck Ellis. We will see you next time. Good night.